Discussion here today, some celebrity estate planning disasters, 5 of them, and what we can all learn from them. And if you haven't subscribed to our Gilfix Law YouTube channel, please do so. This will be there. And of course, if you're watching us there, stay tuned. There's a lot more we can learn. And the subject here today is really talking about how celebrities are really just like the rest of us. And we've heard that many times. They may have millions of dollars, millions of fans, but that doesn't mean that they have the right advisors. It doesn't mean that they have the right plans in place when tragedy strikes. And we're going to tell some stories here today, 5 stories about some celebrities who are no longer with us and the mistakes made with their planning, with their estate planning, and what that really did, how it impacted their families, and what they could have done differently, what we can all learn from this. So let's talk about who we're going to go over. 5 stories. So Prince, Heath Ledger, Anne Heche, she recently passed away, Phillip Seymour Hoffman, Michael Jackson. Who here watching this, who is fans of each of these folks? Maybe you're not fans of all of them. Maybe you're fans of just a couple of them. But I think we're all familiar with at least a couple of these celebrities. And of course, as we wrap this all up, I'm going to go over what we can learn from their stories and what you need to do so your family is not in the position that they were in, that you're not stuck with the mess that some of them unfortunately left their families with. And I have to point out, this is for educational purposes only. It doesn't form attorney-client relationship. This is really just meant to educate and to provide some guidance for you as you think about your own planning. But of course, for us to have an attorney-client relationship, we have to work with you directly. And I hope you get a lot out of this. Again, feel free to ask questions as we go through or leave comments if you're watching this as a recording, and we'll respond to comments to the video. If there's any other celebrities you'd like us to cover in future talks, let us know. But I think this is stuff we hear about it in the news, but we're not always we don't know the details. We don't really know what happened or why it happened. And we always think that, right? I think you can probably relate to this. These celebrities, these people with hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions, well, not all celebrities actually have as much money as we think, but we always assume they have great advisors. They have great teams taking care of these details. And the reality is they often don't. You and your family can avoid these mistakes. You can put that team into place, and our firm, Gilfix and the Wall, can be part of that, but you need to have that team into place. You don't need to be rich or famous. And just about our firm, we're Gilfix and the Pole Associates. For those of you who don't know us, we've been around for over 40 years in the Bay Area, but we serve clients from San Diego to Wairika throughout the state of California. We've literally worked with thousands of families, and this is what we do. We have worked with some celebrities. I can't reveal who they are because we have strict attorney-client privilege, but I can say that none of the 5 stories, these 5 celebrities, we did not work with any of them. And if we had, I would like to think they would not have faced these issues. A lot of them weren't in California, by the way, so we probably couldn't have. But our goal for your family is to provide extraordinary return on investment and really peace of mind to avoid some of these mistakes that were made by these celebrities. So let's go to story number 1, and that will be Prince. So Prince, a legend. I love his music. I wasn't the biggest fan, but I mean, everybody's heard of Prince, right? I think he actually changed his name to a symbol later in life. So, we all know of his music. Maybe you were a fan, maybe you weren't, but you know of Prince. And here's the thing about Prince. I didn't know that much about him, but he was in the industry. He was notoriously known for being very specific about what he wanted. When it came to music, he wanted to make sure that everything was done exactly right. He was very specific about his musical wishes. He was very specific about where his music could be used, how his catalog could be used. So he liked control. He was, I think, in some ways, kind of a control freak. That was probably part of what made him so successful in music. But he didn't have an estate plan. So he was so on top of things while he was alive, so in control of his music, of his musical catalog, of where his music could be used, where it wouldn't be used. He even legally changed his name. That was a painful process, but he never got around to creating an estate plan. So what does that mean? Well, it was an absolute mess. His estate was estimated around 156 million. I think it might have been a little more than that. But it was a mess. When he passed away of a drug overdose, there was no will, there was nothing in place. So this guy who spent his whole life building this extraordinary estate, this extraordinary body of work, he worked so hard. He was a musical genius, but he never put an estate plan into place. So when he passed away, free for all, absolute mess. He didn't have any kids. He wasn't married, so there was no clear line of succession. So what happens? Well, first of all, it's a massive battle, and it was very public. That's why we all saw this. It was all in the news. When Prince passed away, this could have been totally private, but it wasn't. It was everywhere. It was in the newspapers, it was in magazines, it was online. So it was an absolute mess because he didn't have a trust. He didn't even have a will. If he at least had a will, it would have said where his assets went. It would have been subject to the court system, would have been public. But if he had had a living trust, it wouldn't have been. But what happened? It took years. And I think it took 3 or 5 or 6 years for this all to be clarified and cleaned up, because he had multiple people claiming to be his family members entitled to shares of his estate. And how do you prove that distant relatives are or are not entitled to shares? It got very messy. It ended up going to 6 half siblings that he probably didn't even know. If they had come to him during his life, he probably would have said, well, maybe I'll help you a little bit, but I'm not going to give you free money. But they ended up getting his estate. And not only did they get it, but over $3 million, and probably way more than that, went to Comerica Bank because they dealt with the administration of his estate. Over $3 million in legal fees, and probably tens of millions in federal estate taxes. He was way over the limit for estate taxes. So the IRS got tens of millions, half siblings got tens of millions. And where did his money not go? Well, his money didn't go for charitable causes. His money didn't go to people that he knew and loved. His money didn't go to support a foundation or to support future artists. And he could have done so much to support people he loved, and perhaps just as importantly, to maintain his legacy in a way that he would have wanted. So that was all thrown away. And what's the lesson? Well, you need to have an estate plan. His estate really could have avoided tens of millions in estate taxes, either by doing sophisticated planning or just leaving it to charity or for charitable causes. He could have left assets to people he cared about. It could have been private. But because he didn't have an estate plan, it was totally public. It went to the wrong people. It was exposed to taxes, so an absolute mess and really a tragedy. Just think of all the good that his assets could have done, and nothing against his family members, but that might not have been what he wanted. He worked so hard for his entire life to protect assets, and it all went to the wrong place. I didn't know him, but I am almost certain he didn't want it to go to random half siblings rather than to charitable causes or people that he loved. So have an estate plan. That's the biggest mistake I think we've seen in celebrities in many years. Let's talk about the estate planning tragedy of Heath Ledger. So Heath Ledger, obviously a legendary actor, and he was really just coming into his own, and he tragically died of a drug overdose. And I think it was in 2008. He just a legend. And again, he was just becoming that legend. He'd done a lot of acting, and he was becoming one of the most I think celebrated actors in Hollywood. His performance as the Joker may have actually led to his death, because they say it may have caused psychological problems because he dove so deep into that messed up character. But he was doing so well, and he actually had a daughter when he passed away. And he obviously died of a drug overdose. And here's the thing for Heath Ledger, he had a simple plan in place. So unlike some celebrities, in 2003, he put a simple will into place. What's the problem? He has at least had a will. That's better than nothing. The problem is that he did the will, I think, in 2003, and his daughter was born after that. And his will did not leave a penny to his daughter. It left assets to his siblings and to his parents, I believe, because he didn't have kids yet. And so here's the problem. This is actually a situation where having documents may have been worse than not having them, because one, he had a will, not a trust. So it's all public, exposed to probate. Having a living trust and properly funding it would have kept it out of the public eye. But two, and I think he actually, sorry, Steve, I think he passed away after 2008. That was incorrect. He last updated his documents, I think in 2008 or 2003. So don't worry about the dates too much. But the key is having documents that didn't name his daughter were actually worse than none, because it was still exposed to probate, but not a penny went to his daughter. Because here's the thing. Your estate planning documents, if you name assets going to specific people or not going to specific people, they govern. Even if your situation changes, you need to update it. So the money went to his family members. Now, I think they were able to fix it because they all wanted to support his daughter. So they did end up leaving it to his daughter. But what if one of them was getting sued or going bankrupt? What if one of them was estranged from him and his daughter? things could have gone very sideways, very fast. So what is the lesson from the tragic story of Heath Ledger? Well, you have to update your estate planning documents. Having out-of-date documents can be often worse than not having them at all. If you're naming people who you no longer trust, or leaving assets to people you don't want to leave them to, or if you have kids later and didn't account for that. So here was a case where Heath actually, unlike Prince, who didn't have any estate plan into place, Heath Ledger actually had a very simple one, but Heath Ledger having a simple plan ended up being worse than not having a plan at all in this case, because it left assets to the wrong people. And if he hadn't had a will, it still would have been in probate, but at least a big chunk would have gone directly to his daughter. And while this ended up okay, I mean, it was tragic that we lost Heath Ledger, but it ended up okay, I believe, because I think the family disclaimed it, ended up leaving it to his daughter, but they didn't have to. And again, what if someone was estranged from him? What if someone was bankrupt and getting sued? All that could have been exposed, and none of it might have ended up with his daughter. So the lesson, again, is you need to have a revocable living trust, not just a will, and you need to update it every few years, because if you have an out-of-date document, it can be worse than having no documents at all. So that's the tragedy of Heath Ledger's story. Learn from that. Make sure you have an estate plan in place. Let's talk about the estate planning tragedy of Anne Heche. So Anne Heche, very well-known actress. She was a movie star in the early 2000s. She dropped off a little bit towards the latter parts of her career, but maybe she was going to make a comeback. I know she had some substance abuse issues. I was a big fan of Anne Heche, and remember from many movies and TV shows. And as you may have seen in the news, she tragically died after a car crash in August 2022. So died, I think she ran into a house, there was a fire, and she was in the hospital for a while, and eventually she succumbed to those injuries. So it wasn't instant, but she did pass away. Okay, a lot here. What was the mistake? Anne Heche didn't have any estate planning documents. She had no estate planning documents. She had no will. She had no trust, but her loved ones thought that she did. And she had an ex-partner, James Tupper. She was with him and had a child with him, I believe. She also had two sons from different partners. I think it was Atlas and Homer. Homer was an adult, and I don't know Homer. I don't know much about him, but my understanding from news stories is that he's had some substance abuse issues of his own. Maybe not the most responsible person to take over the administration of his mother's estate. And James Tupper, her former partner, said, hey, in 2011, Anne wrote emails saying that her estate and gave some instructions for where she wanted assets to go. Let's use that. Give me the power to oversee this. Like, let me take charge. See this 2011 email? I think he brought it to the court, showed it. It was from Anne Heche. It was to him, showed his wishes. The problem is an email is not a valid planning document. You can't just write something up and type it up and print it out. You can't just email somebody. Those are not valid estate planning documents. You need to do it properly. And so her son Homer fought to take control of the estate. James Tupper, her former partner, ended up fighting this. And what ended up happening? Well, Homer ended up winning in court and got control. He was appointed executor of her estate. And was that the right thing? I don't know. But that's what the court did, because Homer's family, he was her son, or was her son. James Tupper was not her partner anymore. They weren't legally married. He didn't have any legal standing. Anne Heche didn't create a will or a trust. Emails are not an estate plan. So what's the lesson here? Again, emails do not count as an estate planning document. They aren't valid. An email is not an estate planning document. So what she emailed to him didn't count. And it was a mess. And maybe the wrong person was appointed administrator of her estate. Was her son the right choice? Again, I don't know, but it certainly didn't sound very good from the looks of everything. So, I think the key here is she didn't have an estate plan, and she could have put one into place, but she failed to do it. So another tragedy. And if Anne Heche, and sorry, I'm putting a microphone into a different place. If Anne Heche had the right plan, she could have ensured the right person was there and ensured that her sons were properly taken care of. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Her sons may not be taken care of. I don't know what's happening now, but an absolute mess. Don't make those mistakes. Put an estate plan into place. Do not rely on emails to get an estate plan into place, and don't just write something down. You need to do it with an attorney. It needs to be formally done. You need to have the right people named. That's the key lesson for man Heche. Let's talk about the story of Phillip Seymour Hoffman. So Phillip Seymour Hoffman, a legendary character actor. I was a huge fan of him from everything from The Big Lebowski. We go through a list of about 30, 40 amazing movies. I just remember him from The Big Lebowski. He wasn't even a main character, but he was so memorable in that movie, one of my favorites of all time. So many other legendary performances where he would just transform into the character he was. You would barely notice him for a while until eventually he became kind of more of a movie star on his own. But tragically, he died in 2014, way before his time, of a drug overdose. He had 3 children at the time. You might not have known this, but he had children aged 10, 7, and 5. And here's a key fact. Phillip Seymour Hoffman had a longtime girlfriend, but they weren't married. And that has huge implications when it comes to his estate plan. Why? I'll get to that in just a second. Phillip Seymour Hoffman had a $36 million estate. Now, why would we all know the size of his estate? Well, that's the first tip here. If we know the size of his estate, that means he didn't have a properly structured living trust or properly funded trust. He just had a will, meaning all of his assets were exposed to probate. It was all public. It was in the court system. And $36 million is a big number. That's way over the federal estate tax exemption. The exemption is the amount you can pass tax-free to your loved ones without any estate taxes. 36 million is way over that. So a lot was exposed. Now, there were 2 big mistakes here. Well, one, he just had Phillip Seymour Hoffman just had a simple will. He didn't have a living trust. So that meant it was all exposed to probate. It was all public. But 2, he left everything to his girlfriend. He didn't want his kids to be spoiled trust fund kids. And I think we don't want our kids to be trust fund kids. We don't want them to get too much money too soon. Okay, that's fair enough. But he did not. Phillip Seymour Hoffman did not do this the right way. By leaving assets to his girlfriend and not his wife, see, they weren't married, everything was exposed to estate taxes. Every dollar over the exemption amount in 2014, I don't remember off the top of my head what that was, but it was many millions over the limit, was exposed to tax. So he ended up paying, I think his estate paid about $12 million in estate taxes. If he had simply gotten married to his longtime partner, that would have gone tax-free to her. He would have had his exemption saved, and then she would have had her own estate tax exemption as well. So millions could have been protected from estate taxes. So not getting married was one mistake, and not having the right advice to say, hey, you have a large estate. You might want to think about getting married or doing some more sophisticated planning for your kids. So lots of mistakes here. And obviously, no one thought he was going to die at this early age. He died very young. This was obviously unexpected. So he probably wasn't thinking that. But we all have to plan for the unexpected. You can't just think, I'll get to that later. Yeah, this plan's screwed up now, but I'm sure it'll be fine down the road. You can't rely on that. So nothing was protected from estate taxes. It could have gone, if he got married to his girlfriend, would have gone to her estate tax free, and he could have set up structures for his children. He didn't want his kids to be trust fund kids, but by leaving assets to his girlfriend, there's no guarantee it would have gone to his kids. She could have gotten sued, could have gone broke, could have gone bankrupt, could have given it to bad third parties. What's the lesson here from Phillip Seymour Hoffman's story? He got bad advice. He didn't follow advice if he got good advice. He just had a simple will. He didn't get married. He didn't think about the issues of not being married versus being married. And what should he have done? Well, if he'd gotten married, that would have saved millions in estate taxes. And he didn't want his kids to be he didn't want his kids to get too much money too soon. He didn't want them to be trust fund kids. Okay, I get that. But there are a lot of ways where you can leave assets for the benefit of your kids without making them trust fund kids. He could have set up family protection trusts that we create for many of our client families, aka dynasty trusts. And he could have put in age restrictions where they wouldn't have access to the money or access to manage the money until they were 30 or 35 or 40. He could have set them up so they never had control of the assets. A third party could have been in charge of it. He could have protected them from divorce, from lawsuits, from future estate taxes, and he could have saved millions. So he should have had a living trust. He should have at least considered marrying his longtime girlfriend, or at least should have taken some steps to protect his assets from estate taxes. And he could have put in protective trusts for his kids to deal with his concerns about his kids being trust fund kids, which nobody wants that for their kids. There's a lot of ways you can protect assets for multiple generations without turning them into trust fund kids. So he could have created family protection trust. If he'd worked with us, we would have protected all of it or most of it. We could have saved him and his family $10 million and could have protected assets for many generations. So learn from him. Just because you think everything's going to be good, make sure you have a properly set up estate plan. And make sure that if you are worried about protecting assets for future generations, you put protective family protection trusts, aka dynasty trusts, in for your kids. That's the lesson of Phillip Seymour Hoffman. Michael Jackson. Let's talk about the many estate planning mistakes made with the estate of Michael Jackson. This is not complete. There are a lot of nuances to his story. You could write a book on all of the estate planning issues related to Michael Jackson's estate, but I don't think anybody needs an introduction to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, one of the most famous musicians in the history of the planet Earth, had a massive estate. I saw different estimates of 400 something million, but really the estate was worth probably several billion in the sense that it's still kicking off money. So if you looked at the future value of his estate, not just the snapshot in time when he passed away, it was likely in the billions of dollars. So incredibly high stakes. And it still generates hundreds of millions of dollars a year. We're still hearing Michael Jackson music all over the place. And every time it's played, his estate makes more money. So what were some mistakes? There were a lot of mistakes here. So Michael Jackson actually had a living trust. And he did some planning, but there were many problems. So one, Michael Jackson didn't properly fund his trust. So when you create a living trust, that's one thing, but you actually have to retitle your assets in the name of the trust. If you have large assets outside of your living trust, it won't govern. It can still be exposed to probate. Your assets can still be exposed to the court system. So just because you set up a simple or sophisticated living trust, you have to transfer title of your real estate, of your investment accounts, of your LLCs or businesses. And we can help. I gave a recent webinar. Check out our Gilfix Law YouTube channel for a webinar on how to title assets. That is up now or will be up very soon. You need to do this. And Michael Jackson set up a plan, but he didn't fund his trust. And he also didn't set up, as far as I know, a multi-generational or lifelong asset protection trust for his kids. His kids are Prince, Paris, and Blanket, and he wanted to provide for them. But he set up trusts with age restrictions, where I think they got some money at 25 and 30 and 35, but it's going to be a lot of money. So one, this money is going to go directly to his kids. Is that a good thing? And two, because he didn't title all of his assets in his estate, a lot of his assets were exposed to probate. So even though, to a new trust. So even though he had a living trust, because he didn't properly fund it, there was still a big court proceeding needed. And that's where there was some conflict. He had named some professional trustees to oversee things, but that was only for his trust. For assets not in his trust, they were exposed to probate. So I think his mom tried to take control, and there was a battle between his mom and the professional trustees, and it was just a mess, and it was all public. That's why we know a lot about his estate. And again, I might be missing some nuanced details here. That's not the point, though. The point is, because he didn't properly fund his trust, he didn't create a comprehensive plan, there was a multi-year battle. It was very public. His kids are going to get a bunch of money directly with no one overseeing it for them eventually. So what are some lessons? Well, you need to create a sophisticated estate plan, but you also need to make sure that your living trust is properly funded. That's why it's so crucial to work with professionals on this. You don't want to rely on just some, online. One of the biggest issues when you work with like online services or very inexpensive, like just do it quickly, get it done. When those processes set it up is no one's really helping you through the critical steps of funding or helping you to think these things through or helping you to make sure that as you get new assets later in life, that those are all titled in your trust as well. So not only did he not properly fund his trust, but from what I saw, he did not create multi-generational protections for his children. He could have set up family protection trusts for them, dynasty trusts. He could have left money to trust for his kids' benefits. They would have had a high level of protection against divorces, against lawsuits, and even against future estate taxes for his future grandchildren. And he could have named third-party professional trustees to oversee this for them for the rest of their lives. Because, I mean, they're in the public eye, like it or not. His kids have a bullseye on them. Everybody in the world knows that they're super wealthy. A lot of bad actors are probably trying to get at their money. This is happening in Hollywood. I lived in LA for many years. There are a lot of shady people there. I love LA, but there are a lot of shady people in LA. Everywhere. But by creating dynasty trusts and properly funding his living trust, he could have ensured the state out of the public eye, and he could have ensured that professionals could oversee the money for his kids really for the rest of their lives. So some big mistakes there. So Michael Jackson actually created a plan, but didn't complete it. He didn't properly fund his trust, didn't set up those protections that he needed. And I'm almost certain that his estate was exposed to hundreds of millions in potentially unnecessary estate taxes, more sophisticated tax planning. And we've helped many families who are not worth as much as Michael Jackson to avoid estate taxes. But right now, you can pass up to $12.92 million free of estate taxes, but that number is going to drop in 2026. So even if you don't think you have a very large estate, you might be exposed to estate taxes down the road. So you need to make sure you have a trust, you work with professionals, set it up, professionals to make sure it's properly funded, and think multi-generationally, protect your kids, your grandkids, and think about the steps you can take. You can watch, we did a Gilfix webinar called I think it's Next Level Planning for High Net Worth Families, about some of the techniques we can use to avoid estate taxes as well. So Michael Jackson, a tragedy, could have been done differently. Learn from his mistakes. So let's kind of sum this up. Let's bring this all together. What are some of the lessons? Well, don't make the mistakes that these 5 celebrities did. There's probably 20 or 30 other high profile celebrity stories I could have told. And we might do another one. So if you're watching this, hey, leave a comment or let us know if there's any other celebrity estate planning stories you'd like us to tell. Leave it in the comments or leave it in the Q&A function if you're watching this live. Let us know if there's any other celebrity estate planning story you'd like us to review. But the key is you need a core estate plan. I don't care whether you're high net worth, just an average everyday person like most of us, everybody needs a revocable living trust, a durable power of attorney, and an advance directive. Don't rely on doing it later. Don't try to do this yourself. Don't send emails thinking that they're going to solve the problem. Don't write a simple document. Be really careful if you're ever thinking of an online service, but really make sure everything's structured properly. We didn't even get into issues around celebrities or any people who created a estate plan and named the wrong people in charge. There are a lot of stories where celebrities got ripped off by bad business managers where they gave them power of attorney and could have done it properly. So you need to work with an expert. Our firm, Gilfix and Lopole Associates, has helped thousands of families. Of course, if you're watching this live, you probably have worked with us. And if you're watching this later, we, of course, can help you to avoid making these mistakes. But you need to make sure you have that living trust, power of attorney, advance directive, that you name the right people, that they're properly structured. For your kids, you need to put family protection trusts into place, AKA dynasty trusts, if you want to protect them. And we need to update this regularly. We need to take a look. So we saw some stories where there were plans in place, but they weren't updated or they weren't properly funded. So you need that team around you, and we can be that thought partner, of course. But while you're watching this, don't miss this opportunity while this is all top of mind. Take action so you and your family don't make some of the mistakes that these 5 celebrities did. And of course, we can help you with your dreams and your legacy. And if you're watching this, please like, or watch this on YouTube. We'll post this to YouTube. Like, comment, and share this video if you think it's fun or useful for anybody else. Subscribe to our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. But if you haven't set that estate plan up, or if you have questions about it, of course, set a meeting with us. Easy to find us. We're at gilfix.com. Very simple to find us online. Gilfix and Lopole Associates, we work with thousands of families throughout the state of California. We can help to make sure that you don't make the mistakes that these celebrities did. I know I'm making fun of, I don't mean to take this lightly. It's super sad when this happens, but very easy to find us at gilfix.com and 650-493-8070. So again, I hope these stories were useful. These are all people we sort of feel like we knew. And it's so sad when any celebrity passes away, especially before their time. And it's even more sad when we find out that mistakes in their estate plans result in their assets going to the wrong people, or being exposed to unnecessary taxes, or being exposed to the public. Just because you're not a celebrity doesn't mean you want everything in the public eye, right? You may want things private. Most people want things private. And anytime things are exposed to the public eye or to probate, it means the fees are incredibly high. So, and you can save money, time, but most importantly, peace of mind and upholding your legacy. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take a couple questions. I don't know if there will be for this. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to make comments. If there's any other estate planning story you want us to tell from a celebrity, hey, leave it in the comments and we'll respond to them, maybe tell that story later. So we have other Gilfix Law YouTube webinars coming up. You can check our website, gilfix.com, for more webinars coming up. I hope everybody's staying safe, sane, and healthy. And I hope you got something out of this. Spread the word, though. Don't make the mistakes that these celebrities made. Let's all learn, and let's all make sure that our families are protected, our legacies are protected, and that we're all in great shape. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope everybody's staying safe, sane, and healthy. And check out the Gilfix Law YouTube channel, gilfix.com, for more information. But great to connect. Thank you for spending this time with me, and we'll see you real soon. Take care.